This show is part of One Place, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We are diving into 10 major legal and criminal stories today, ranging from high-profile murder trials to tragic accidents and disturbing discoveries that have shocked local communities.
A Utah mother allegedly poisoned her husband's Moscow Mule.
Financial motives emerge in the Richins family murder case.
The Nancy Guthrie disappearance investigation faces a difficult timeline.
Florida police discover a disturbing house of horrors recently.
A terminal cancer patient travels miles to commit murder.
A furnace dispute leads to a fatal family attack.
A Missouri mother is sentenced after her son's fall.
The trial begins for the execution of a family.
A California family sues after a tragic restaurant crash.
An Oregon mother survives a terrifying home invasion attempt.
First, the Richins case.
The case of Kouri Richins has taken a dark turn as more details emerge about the night her husband Eric died. On March 4, 2022, Kouri claimed she found Eric unresponsive in their bed after they had shared a Moscow Mule to celebrate a business deal. However, the medical examiner later determined that Eric died from a lethal dose of fentanyl, which was 5 times the lethal amount. This revelation shocked the community, especially since Kouri had recently written a children's book about grieving a father. Prosecutors now allege she intentionally poisoned the drink she made for him.
The family of Eric Richins was suspicious from the very beginning, noting that Eric was not an opioid user and had even warned them that if anything happened to him, they should look at Kouri. His family's spokesman, Greg Skordas, mentioned that Eric believed his wife was trying to kill him. Despite these heavy accusations, Kouri maintains her innocence. Her defense attorney, Sky Lazaro, argues that the prosecution must prove she actually obtained the drugs and administered them. Without a direct link connecting those dots, the defense believes the state will have a very difficult time proving murder in court.
Now let's shift to motives. As the investigation into Eric Richins' death deepened, investigators began looking into the couple's financial history and their prenuptial agreement. On the day they married in 2013, they signed a contract stating they had no rights to each other's assets unless one of them died while married. If Eric died, his masonry business would transfer to Kouri. While Kouri's family painted a picture of a successful real estate mogul, court documents suggest her business was actually drowning in millions of dollars of debt by 2022. This financial pressure provides a potential motive that prosecutors are now focusing on heavily during the proceedings.
Further allegations suggest that Kouri began misappropriating funds from Eric's accounts as early as 2019. Prosecutors claim she used a fraudulent power of attorney to take money without his knowledge. This alleged pattern of financial deception adds a layer of complexity to the murder charges. While her mother and brother insist the couple was in a great place emotionally, the paper trail suggests a marriage strained by secret debts and unauthorized transactions. The contrast between the grieving widow who wrote a book on loss and the woman described in these court documents is at the heart of this tragic Utah story.
Next up, Nancy Guthrie. The search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie has reached a critical and frustrating 45-day mark. Guthrie, the mother of Today co-host Savannah Guthrie, disappeared from her Tucson home on February 1st. Despite an intensive investigation, experts warn that as time passes, finding fresh leads becomes exponentially harder. Recently, authorities reviewed additional surveillance footage from her property, but the images only showed routine visits from family and workers. None of the new footage captured the suspect seen on the original doorbell camera video. This lack of progress is a major concern for law enforcement, as they struggle to keep the investigation moving forward with limited evidence.
Investigators are now pinning their hopes on forensic genetic genealogy, the same technique used to catch high-profile suspects like Bryan Kohberger. DNA recovered from the scene is currently being analyzed, but experts like retired FBI agent Lance Lysing warn that this process is time-consuming. It involves navigating complex family trees and investigating multiple potential relatives. While over 1,500 tips have come in following the announcement of a $1 million reward, the public silence from law enforcement in recent weeks is palpable. The family remains hopeful that this silence means investigators are quietly closing in on a suspect, but the clock is certainly ticking in this case.
Moving to Florida now. In Sanford, Florida, authorities have arrested 37-year-old Blake Edward McInnes after discovering what they described as a house of horrors. The investigation began after dozens of cyber tips alerted the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to the storage of child sexual abuse material. When police raided the home, they found a scene that left veteran investigators speechless. The house contained anatomically correct childlike sex dolls, children's underwear, and rooms decorated specifically to look like they belonged to young girls. McInnes now faces 100 offenses, including possession of AI-generated child pornography and child sexual abuse material. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
The details of the home are particularly disturbing, with one room filled with pink princess castles and toys, despite no children living there. Prosecutors noted that the home was located in a gated community very close to an elementary school, which added to the community's alarm. One of the AI characters found on his devices was named Emily and was designed to resemble a 6-year-old child. Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier emphasized the horrific nature of the evidence, stating that the scene was one of the most disturbing in his career. The sheer volume of digital and physical evidence suggests a deeply entrenched and dangerous obsession that authorities are now fully exposing.
Next, an Alaska tragedy. A shocking act of violence occurred in Anchorage, Alaska, involving 61-year-old Matthew Becker, a stand-up comedian from Arizona. Becker, who had recently been diagnosed with terminal cancer, traveled thousands of miles with the apparent intent of killing his ex-wife. He was spotted lurking outside her hair salon in a rental car. When she arrived to open the business, she noticed her locks had been tampered with. Becker then stepped out of his vehicle and began firing multiple shots at her. Fortunately, she was able to run away and hide, but the violence did not end there. Becker then targeted her 87-year-old father, Romaine Clark, who was later found dead.
After the shooting spree, Becker fled the scene and was found dead a day later in a wooded area. While the exact cause of his death hasn't been officially released, his brother confirmed the terminal cancer diagnosis. It appears Becker intended this to be his final act. The victim told police she had no idea her ex-husband was even in the state, as he had moved to Arizona after their divorce. This premeditated attack on his former family has left the Anchorage community in shock. The tragedy is compounded by the fact that the elderly father was killed in his own home while his daughter was fighting for her life.
Now to Indiana. In Merrillville, Indiana, a domestic dispute over a furnace temperature escalated into a deadly attack. 44-year-old Jason Whitaker is accused of killing his father and critically injuring his mother. According to court documents, the violence began when Whitaker's mother asked him to stop turning off the furnace in the basement. In response, Whitaker allegedly struck her in the head with a cast-iron skillet and stabbed her multiple times. When his 74-year-old father, Orel, tried to intervene to save his wife, Jason allegedly turned the knife on him. The mother managed to escape and call 911, but sadly, Orel Whitaker did not survive the brutal encounter at the home.
When police arrived at the residence, they found Jason Whitaker exiting the house with his hands up. Inside, they discovered a gruesome scene. The mother had suffered a fractured skull and required a metal plate to be surgically implanted. She told investigators she saw her son dragging his father's body across the basement floor. Jason now faces charges of murder, attempted murder, and multiple counts of battery. This isolated incident has devastated the family and left the neighborhood questioning how a simple argument over household utilities could lead to such a horrific outcome. The mother remains in stable but critical condition as she recovers from her extensive physical injuries.
Next, a Missouri sentencing. A Missouri woman, Corinne O'Connor, has been sentenced to 10 years in prison following the tragic death of her 5-year-old son, Grayson. In November 2003, Grayson fell 17 stories from a window in their high-rise apartment. When police arrived, they found the boy with catastrophic injuries in an alley. Inside the apartment, they discovered a scene of neglect, with trash and feces everywhere. Most notably, there was chocolate syrup on the windowsill where Grayson had been eating, and a small handprint in the syrup on the glass. While other windows had safety locks, the one Grayson fell from did not. O'Connor pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter for her role in the tragedy.
The case is even more heartbreaking because neighbors and relatives had reportedly called child abuse hotlines at least 7 times before the fatal fall. They described O'Connor as overwhelmed and noted she would often yell at her son or leave him alone. Despite these warnings, Grayson remained in the home. On the day of his death, O'Connor didn't even call 911. She simply told officers he went out the window when they arrived. The prosecutor stated that the 10-year sentence provides accountability while acknowledging the mother's own grief. It serves as a grim reminder of the system's failure to protect a vulnerable child despite multiple red flags from the community.
Moving to San Antonio. The trial of Christopher Preciado has begun in San Antonio, where he faces capital murder charges for the deaths of Savannah Soto, Matthew Guerra, and their unborn child. The couple disappeared just before Savannah was scheduled to be induced at a hospital. Their bodies were found 5 days later in a car covered in junk. Prosecutors allege that Preciado met the couple for a drug deal and executed them both within 30 seconds for money. The scene was described as horrific, with Savannah found in the passenger seat with a baby carrier on her belly. Preciado allegedly hid at his parents' house for nearly 2 weeks before he was finally apprehended by the police.
Preciado's defense attorney, Joseph Esparza, is arguing that the shooting was actually an act of self-defense during a drug transaction gone wrong. He claims there is no DNA or video evidence that directly proves capital murder, and urged the jury not to rush to judgment. However, the prosecution maintains that Preciado admitted to the killings, even if he tried to frame them as self-defense. The loss of the young couple and their unborn son, who was to be named David, has deeply affected the San Antonio community. As the trial continues, the jury will have to weigh the claims of a chaotic struggle against the prosecution's evidence of a cold-blooded execution.
Next, a California lawsuit. In Burlingame, California, the family of 4-year-old Aiden Fang has filed a major lawsuit following a tragic chain reaction crash. Aiden was playing outside a restaurant when a 19-year-old driver in an SUV was struck by an 11-year-old on an e-bike. The impact caused the driver to accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake, sending the vehicle onto the sidewalk and through the restaurant storefront. Aiden was pinned under the vehicle and killed instantly. The lawsuit targets the driver, her parents, the parents of the boy on the e-bike, and the city of Burlingame itself. The family argues that the city ignored pedestrian safety warnings and allowed dangerous parking that blocked visibility.
The details of the crash are harrowing, as Aiden's parents were inside the restaurant and watched the vehicle barrel toward them, stopping just feet away. They rushed outside only to find their son motionless under the car. The lawsuit points out that the e-bike's manual stated the 11-year-old was too young to operate it safely, especially with a passenger. Furthermore, the city had a pedestrian fatality rate significantly higher than the national average, yet failed to implement safety measures at that specific driveway. By bringing this case, Aiden's father hopes to force the city to prioritize safety so that no other family has to endure such a preventable and permanent loss.
Finally, an Oregon invasion. A terrifying home invasion occurred in Portland, Oregon, when a stranger walked into a home and attacked a mother while she was holding her 10-month-old baby. The suspect, identified as Judson DeFeer, allegedly entered through an unlocked door and told the woman, "Honey, I'm here," leading her to briefly mistake him for her husband who was working in the yard. DeFeer then grabbed her and forced her into a guest bedroom, attempting to sexually assault her. In a moment of incredible bravery and quick thinking, the mother convinced him to let her put the baby in a crib first. This gave her the chance to barricade herself and her 3-year-old in another room.
Once she was safe behind a bookshelf, the mother ran onto the balcony and screamed for help, alerting her husband and several people from a nearby church. DeFeer fled the scene before they could catch him, but he was later arrested by Portland police. The victim described him as having unwashed body odor and a disheveled appearance. This incident has shaken the South Tabor neighborhood, highlighting how quickly a peaceful afternoon can turn into a nightmare. The mother's ability to remain calm under extreme pressure likely saved her children from harm. DeFeer now faces serious charges as the community grapples with the brazen nature of this daytime attack in a family home.
That concludes our daily briefing. Thank you for joining us for these critical updates. Be sure to follow the show for your next daily roundup of the stories that matter most.